The fumbling is just part of how they play. When the quarterback is going to run zone reads and options and ball handling, it just leads to more fumbles. I think that's across the board. But again, it's still not acceptable.
I'm Jayson Jorgensen. It is time for another installment of Husker Chat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. We are joined by Sean Callahan, the publisher of HuskerOnline, as we talk Husker football. Boy, Sean, we had a good roll going there as Nebraska had an undefeated October. They certainly had some momentum going into that game against Michigan State, but unfortunately things did not go Nebraska's way, and they got to bounce back this week at home against Maryland.
Yeah, it was a tough week. I mean, they lost by 3, and they had every opportunity, to kind of make a statement and win that game in East Lansing. Credit Michigan State. They made the 4 or 5 big plays they needed to make. They had a couple breaks go their way on some of the calls, but Nebraska just didn't make that game-finishing play they needed. Their defense, kind of lacked a little bit of that aggressive edge maybe we had seen, and they didn't force any turnovers. And Michigan State won the turnover battle 3-0. And it's just going to be hard when you're already losing that phase of the game 3-0 to consistently win. And Nebraska's been able to win games doing that this year. It finally caught up to them though in East Lansing.
What is your thoughts on this turnover bug for this team? They talk about it every week, but unfortunately they've not been able to make a whole lot of progress there.
It's a lot of things. I mean, Harburg is a developing young quarterback. They're missing a lot of their good receivers, so guys aren't getting separation. They're not getting as open. Harburg is getting pressured, quite a bit. I mean, 21 of his 37 dropbacks, he was under pressure. He was only blitzed on one of those 37 dropbacks. So he took a lot of pressure from a 4-man rush. And when they're only rushing 4 and they're pressuring you, that means they're 7 back. And, when you miss on those types of throws, somebody's usually going to be behind the corner or the linebacker, and they can lead to interceptions. And there were 2, and there could have been 3. One of them was called back. The fumbling is just part of how they play. When the quarterback is going to run zone reads and options and ball handling, it just leads to more fumbles. I think that's across the board. But again, it's still not acceptable. And Nebraska's got to clean some of those things up.
One of the big storylines coming out of the game, and this also became a national storyline, were the calls that did not go Nebraska's way. Were you surprised how Matt Rhule kind of came out in a way, kind of addressed that this week?
Yeah, and he really didn't try to go after the on-field officials as much as he did the replay. And I was watching, we were in the media room having to wait because we couldn't watch on the field. And I'm like, first of all, Malachi Coleman got the first down. Like, what's the deal? Like, how can they mark that short? He's clearly beyond the marker. That was a big 15 seconds that was not called and not stopped to look at. But the big one was the incomplete pass. Matt Rhule was not able to challenge because he's out of timeouts. They called it a fumble. So there were about 30 seconds of clock that went off on those 2 officiating blunders that replay could have stepped in right away, and they didn't. And that makes it tough, especially in a situation like that. And Nebraska only needed about 15 to 20 yards to get a good field goal try for Alvano that would have tied the game up. So, I think there is a legit beef to be frustrated. And, the missed face mask, the missed pass interference. And I like how Matt Rhule said, look, I don't even need to say anything. It was pass interference. And he's right. I mean, any official at any level of football can't look at that call or the face mask and be like, oh yeah, that's not it's a face mask. It's a pass interference. So I think there was some truth to some of these things. But again, we've seen it happens in all. I mean, you watch a lot of Division II football, high school football. Every game you go to, you're going to see those types of things happen.
We are talking with Sean Callahan, the publisher of HuskerOnline. It's HuskerChat, brought to you by Acres Equipment. All right, Huskers have to put that game in the rearview mirror. This Saturday morning, they will take on Maryland. This is not the season the Terrapins were looking to have. They started the season with thoughts of being in the top 25. They opened up 5-0. Then they were whipped by Ohio State. They have been a downspin since then. What's your read on this matchup?
Yeah, the timing's interesting because Maryland's now 5-4. They were 5-0, so they're losers their last 4 games. They're coming off a Penn State loss where they were beat pretty thoroughly. It's a talented team. Maryland, in terms of a roster, top to bottom, has probably more talented players than anybody in the Big Ten West. But talent doesn't always win. It's scheme, it's execution, it's belief. And Maryland has struggled. Tagovailoa is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. He's going to give Nebraska problems. He's not a runner, but he holds the ball for a long time, kind of like Shedeur Sanders did against Colorado, and he'll extend plays and test Nebraska. So Tony White's crew's got to be aggressive, and they've got to come at and Tagovailoa and set the tone in this game on Saturday.
Have you talked to some insiders or some people from Maryland? Where has this kind of gone wrong for them?
It's really hard to say other than just schedule. I mean, when you have Ohio State and Penn State in there, but the Northwestern and the Illinois games are the ones you look at. You're like, whoa, because Nebraska has beaten both these teams. So a lot of, like, Mike Loxley's a great September coach, but he's not a great October, November coach. And some of it's just schedule. I mean, they play always a very easy non-conference slate that allows them to kind of get some momentum. And then when they get in the Big Ten East, it's a beast. So it's really hard to put your finger on it because there is talent on this team.
Do you think Nebraska's their way of winning games against other people can work against Maryland? Can they find a way to make this a low-scoring game and maybe win it late?
That's a great question because you're right. Maryland's not going to want to play low scoring. They're going to want to push this game in the upper 20s and low 30s. And Nebraska is just not built to play that kind of game right now. They've got to keep it in the low 20s to the high teens, as we know. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on Tony White. I think the key is, can they hold in the red zone? Can Nebraska's defense force field goals instead of touchdowns? It's at home. You have to like that. It's not going to be weather like we saw the last home game. It's going to be a little nicer. So they'll be able, Maryland's going to be able to throw it around. It's not like Nebraska's going to be aided by the wind that we saw in that win against Purdue.
All right. Hopefully Nebraska can get it done at home and get that 6-win number off their back. Because I would think if this continues, that the pressure of that is going to build into those last 2 games.
No question. Yeah. Everybody knows what one more win means for Nebraska. And you would love to see this team that's a slight underdog right now pull it out and just get that 6th win. Then Wisconsin, Iowa, it's going to be like the monkeys off their back and like, hey, let's go play and have some fun and see if we can make the West Championship.
All right. Sean, as always, we appreciate your time and your thoughts.
Thanks, Jason.
That was Sean Callahan, the publisher of Husker Online, joining us for Husker Chat every week. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. I'm Jayson Jorgensen.